Hi, this is Ed. Today on our Rapid Start, we're going to talk about sales order processing in MyGP Cloud. Sales order processing is one of the most robust modules in the entire GP suite, and I'd like to take you first to the setup, the sales order processing setup, to give you an idea of where the defaults are defined. You can see up in the upper left-hand quadrant, we have some checkboxes. For instance, the display item unit cost. This is selected, so we would be able to see the item unit cost. If it was deselected, we would not see it. We also have our data entry defaults. If there's a quantity shortage, how do we treat that? Do we back order all? Do we sell balance? Do we cancel all? What's the way that we, by default, deal with quantity shortages? The document date we're pulling from the user date, and the requested ship date we're pulling from the document date. Up here in the upper right, we have the document defaults. So we have our default site where we ship from, our default checkbook ID, in a scenario where a customer will give us a deposit, we would know what checkbook to apply that to. We have our quotes, orders, invoice, and back order and return IDs all set up. So we're going to take a look at an invoice ID just to give you an idea of what these setup screens look like. You can have any number of IDs for invoices or orders or quotes, however many your company needs to conduct business. You could have a different type for a service quote versus a product quote and so forth. Each ID has its own seed number, and the seed number is represented here in Fabricam. They led with the STDINV and then the integer 2263. So that would be the next invoice number that gets assigned to the next invoice document. We also have some options down here that says it's okay to delete a document if this is checked, or okay to edit a document if this is checked. If you don't want that to happen, you can deselect those checkboxes. If you want the user to have to enter in a password to perform one of those functions, you would just key the password in here, and the user would have to know that password in order to perform that function. So we'll go ahead and close this invoice setup window, and we're back at the sales order processing setup screen. Also like to point out here, this is pretty important. We have a choice of taking the posting accounts from the item or from the customer master. Most people take it from the item. You may have different revenue accounts for different inventory items, and this would be the way to track that. Of course, we want to maintain history on everything, and that looks all good, so we'll go ahead and say OK here, and our setup is complete. Now if we go to the sales transaction entry window and click on the hyperlink to the sales transaction entry, I've got my system set up to start with a quote. So we'll go ahead. You could also have your system say, I never do a quote, I only do an order. In user preferences, you can define start with an order, start with a quote, start with an invoice. As I tab through these fields, the standard quote is, as we defined it on the setup screen, comes in, and the next document number comes in also from that setup screen. The next field, the customer ID, we need to define a customer for this transaction. I like to use the keyboard equivalent of clicking on the looking glass, which is Control L, to get my customer lookups. We'll go ahead and select Aaron Fitz for this transaction. From here you can see that the default ship to addresses come in, but Aaron has a couple of ship to addresses, so we can either select his primary or his warehouse. So we'll go ahead and select his warehouse, and now the next field that we go in is the quote date. The quotes have an expiration period on the setup. typically it's 30 days. So 30 days from this date, actually 31 days from this date, this quote cannot be transferred to an order because it will have expired. We'll put all these quotes in a batch called quotes. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. It's a good idea to keep your quotes separate from your orders, separate from your invoices as they travel through the system. It's just an easier way to manage because you can actually do an edit list on the batches and see what's in there. Our default ship from site has come in automatically. That's the warehouse site. And now we have the customer PO number field. Typically at this point in the sales cycle, we don't really have a purchase order from the customer. We're in the process of negotiating. However, if you do have one, you can key it in here. And this is a string field. There's no logic. It's for reference, but it will transfer with the quote to an order and then from the order to an invoice. We'll tab through the currency ID field for multi-currency, and we're on the first row of the scrolling window where we're going to enter in our first item that we're going to quote to Aaron Fitz. So I'll go ahead and do the Control L again, and I am looking for a item that I know is Rose, so I'll key in RO and find it, and there's our Rose item. Since this Rose item has been set up correctly, the sales order processing window knows that we sell it as each, and we know the unit price. We're going to go ahead and sell 10 of these, or try and sell 10 to Aaron. Go ahead and key in 10, and you can see that the extended price is automatically incremented to account for the extra quantity. I hit the downward pointing chevrons to show me the sales transaction entry detail window, and here's the description. Here's the cost. We defined in the setup that it was okay for me to see the cost. We can change the requested ship date here if we need to, and we can see that the quantity to orders is 10. The nice thing about this is we know the quantity available here. I have 25 of these in my warehouse, so this will be an easy quote to order to invoice. So we'll go ahead and close this up, and there's also some additional information we can put in here. If you click on the rightward pointing arrow, you're taken to the sales item detail entry window. From here we can change the ship to address or the shipping method for this line item only. We can also change where it ships from or where it ships to for this line item. This information has defaulted down from the header, where we told the header just take the defaults, and that's what's populated in here. But if you need to change it, you can. This is also a place where you can put a line item comment. So if you click on the rightward pointing arrow here, you're able to key in a comment that will appear directly below the item on the quote and the order and the invoice. So that could be a situation where this needs to be delivered to Dock 2. And we'll go ahead and say OK here. And we'll save this sales item detail entry window and then close it. So we've pretty much completed this quote. It's ready to be sent off to Aaron Fitz. A couple things I'd like to point out about the header of the sales transaction is next to the customer ID there's an expansion, a rightward pointing expansion arrow. If you click on that, you have the sales customer detail entry window. From here you can see Aaron Fitz's bill to address, his ship to address, the shipping method, and the payment terms, and so forth. Also, another nice feature that I like here is if you click on this payments button, you actually have an area where you can make a quick down and dirty credit decision. You can see Aaron's aging buckets, you can see his credit limit, and how he's been paying. So you can make a quick credit decision without even leaving the sales transaction entry window. We'll go ahead and close this and say OK here and save this quote off to the quote batch. We want to get that quote off to Aaron Fitz. We want him to see that quote. So we'll go ahead and drill down on the document number and we'll find that quote. And we'll print it off. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll print it off to the screen. And from here, here's the quote with our description on our extra comment on the line item. And we can go ahead and send this off to Aaron and see if he accepts that quote from us. Aaron has accepted that quote, so we'll need to go ahead and transfer that quote to an order. The way I like to do this is I know that was our last quote was 29, so I'll just go ahead and bring it up that way. From here, we would go to Actions, Transfer to Order. If there were to be a quantity shortage, we already have the default set on what to do in that situation. We'll go ahead and transfer this quote and send it to the screen. It's told us that quote 1029 has successfully transferred to order 2235. So the quote number is not going to be the order number. It's going to take the next order number that the system has so that multiple people can be entering orders and quotes and they won't run into each other trying to use the same number. The first thing that we need to do here is we need to take it out of the quote batch and put it in the order batch. So I'll go ahead and key in the order batch and tab off, and I don't have an order batch. So we'll add it on the fly. And we're going to call this the order batch, and we're going to save all our orders in there, and then we'll tab through. So from here, we can go ahead and print our picking ticket and our packing slips. So we'll go ahead and print those. We'll print them to the screen again just so we can take a quick look at them. And we'll send these back to the warehouse so they can pick this order and they can slap this on the order. This is the picking ticket, and the other one was the packing slip. So they pickers would note the quantity picked in here and bring it back to the front office so we would know that in fact it has been picked. It is ready to be shipped. So we'll go ahead and ship that, and then we'll invoice the customer. So we'll do the same method to get that order back up, and there it is. We can take a look again at any additional information we have here. We can tell right away that this is going to transfer from an order to an invoice because we've got the quantity available here. We'll go ahead and close this and go to Actions, Transfer, and Transfer to Invoice. Go ahead and transfer that. And again, we're going to get a report that tells us that order 2235 has been successfully transferred to invoice 2263. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to get it out of that order batch, and we want to get it into what I call a daily invoice batch. This would be a batch that at the end of the day, when you've confirmed that everything is shipped, you would post this batch and send the invoice to the customer. So I like to use my first and last initials and then today's date. So I'll use 04 1217 because that's the dates that Fabricam uses. Tab off, and that batch already exists. So we can go ahead and save it off to that batch and print the invoice before we leave. You could also print the packing slips and picking slips, but seems like that would be putting the cart before the horse. But however you guys do it in your company is however you do it. So we'll go ahead and send this to the screen. And there's our invoice. We'll go ahead and send this off to Aaron, and he can confirm that it's on its way, and he now owes us $2,500. From here, I'll go ahead and post that batch. So the way I like to do this is I've already got the batch up and available by virtue of the sales transaction entry screen. I'll just hit the rightward pointing arrow here, and there's my batch ID. Now when I post this, I'll get a number of posting journals. We'll send them all to the screen so you can take a peek at what they are. This is where you can really tell that Dynamics GP was designed by accountants because they just love their audit trails. You can choose to turn these off if you don't want them, or you can just cancel so that you don't receive it. This is one that I suggest that you keep. This has the most information. It has any commissions that you're going to pay. It has all the distributions. It has everything that you really need to know about what happened to this transaction right here. We'll open this up a little bit so we can see our inventory got credited, and our sales got credited, and our receivables got debited, and our cost of goods. Everything is in good order here. This is the way we like to see it. We like to see this stuff automated so that users, CSRs, don't have to deal with posting accounts. There's our distribution breakdown. This is basically the same information presented in a different way. Our checkbook posting journal, had we received a payment, that would show up here. And this is our cost variance journal. We didn't have any cost variances, so there's nothing here. And now we can go ahead and take a look at this sales transaction because now it appears in receivables transaction. Since our sales transaction entry has been created as a quote, transferred to an order, and then transferred to an invoice, we can see everything that happened to that transaction via inquiry. It's now an open transaction because Aaron still owes us for that transaction. So we'll go ahead and click on Inquiry, Transaction by Customer, reach down and get Aaron Fitz. And we don't want to look at history. History are transactions that have been completely satisfied, paid, and the paid transaction routine has been run. Work are transactions that are in a batch but unposted. We're looking at open, so we'll go ahead and hit redisplay here. I'm going to change this to the document date so we have a little easier time to find it. So I'll key in 0417 112 17 and hit redisplay, and there's our transaction. Go ahead and hit the hypertext document number. We have a read-only image of the original transaction. A couple things I'd like to point out here is you can take a look at but not change the distributions. You can take a look at but not change everything that happened to this document from the original quote to the order to the invoice. Also from here, you can actually reprint it if you need to. We'll go ahead and hit the printer icon, hit Invoices, Print, and we'll send this to the screen. This document is a reprint of the original. It comes across with historical on it to let the customer know that this is a reprint. A lot of customers want that removed, and we can do that with the report writer so that it looks just like the original. So hope you enjoyed learning about SOP, or sales order processing, in Microsoft Dynamics GP, MyGP Cloud. We're standing by for your questions, and talk to you then.